The small town of Los Angeles woke before dawn to a horror that would shatter its very foundation and leave its inhabitants reeling in disbelief. In the pale gray light of early morning, a private jet carrying Ridge Forrester and Brooke Logan to a celebration in Italy, an intimate renewal of vows to heal their battered marriage, plunged violently from the sky somewhere over the Mojave Desert. The plane's distress call had been brief, desperate, "Mayday, Mayday, engine failure. We're losing altitude fast," and then silence. As news helicopters circled the smoking wreckage, townspeople huddled around televisions and smartphones, straining to process the unthinkable. The man who had led Forrester Creations through a decade of triumphs and betrayals, the woman whose very name epitomized passion and perseverance, were now in the crucible of a disaster so severe that no one dared hope for survivors. Taylor Hayes, who had spent years loving Ridge in ways few could fathom, trembled in her Beverly Hills home when the phone call came. Her hands, once steady with the confidence of a woman of science, shook as she listened to the dispatcher's voice, strained with pity and uncertainty. "Mrs. Hayes, we've found one survivor, Brooke Logan. She's alive, but critical. A man was with her, name of Ridge Forrester, last seen holding her as the plane broke apart." "I'm sorry, ma'am," and then nothing. Silence heavier than grief itself. Taylor dropped the phone as though its voice had scorched her fingertips. Her world narrowed to a single, excruciating question. Where was Ridge? In the hospital's austere trauma unit, Hope Logan paced like a caged animal, her daughter Douglas asleep at her sister's house, unaware of the terror unfolding. Hope's heart thudded with every ambulance siren, every whispered exchange between doctors and nurses, until at last she was allowed into Brooke's private room. Brooke lay on the gurney, unconscious, her body broken by fragments of metal and the unforgiving desert floor. Tubes snaked from her arms, monitors beeped in a staccato rhythm, and beneath the bandages her chest rose and fell with labored effort. Hope reached for her sister's hand and felt the fragility of life in her limp fingers. Beside Brooke, a lone oak chestnut hair clip lay forgotten in the sterile white sheets, Brooke's trademark, now dulled by the specter of death. And then the room filled with uniformed officers, their badges gleaming under fluorescent lights. They bore stacks of photographs, images of the crash site, scorched fuselage, scattered luggage, and, in the center of each frame, the haunting figure of Ridge cradling Brooke in what appeared to be her final moments. In one photo, Ridge's face was contorted with agony. In another, his suit jacket was torn and bloodied, an orange tint staining his collar as though the sky itself had bled onto his skin. The officer spoke in hushed tones, photographing Brooke's 4 bags and Ridge's Rolex, sealing evidence for the investigation. But all Hope saw was the devotion etched into Ridge's expression. Eyes locked on Brooke, arms wrapped protectively around her as though willing his own life to slip away so long as she could live. She knelt beside the gurney, pressing her hand against Brooke's as she whispered a prayer. Outside, Taylor arrived, her cane clicking against the hall's tile floor, the weight of her loss compressing her chest. When she saw Brooke, tubes and wires in a battlefield of technology, her breath caught. She whispered, "Brooke, my dear, dear friend," but no answer came. Then she saw Hope's face, pale and determined, and the two women shared a look that spoke volumes, grief for a woman lying at death's door, and grief deeper still for a man missing, presumed lost to the ravages of the crash. News outlets exploded with the story, "Forrester Creations heir lost in jet crash? Brooke Logan in critical condition. Has Ridge Forrester died in service of his love?" Headlines boasted lurid speculation, yet none could capture the truth. That Ridge had given his all to protect Brooke, that his final heartbeat might have been hers. As the hours bled into the afternoon, the coroner's van rumbled to the back entrance of the hospital. Taylor straightened her shoulders, steeling herself for the worst. The medical examiner emerged alone, eyes downcast, and approached Taylor with gentle sorrow. Mrs. Hayes, he asked softly. Taylor's lips parted, but no words came. The examiner swallowed and pressed a form into her hand. Ridge Forrester, presumed dead at the scene, death pronounced at 10:17 a.m. cause, multiple traumatic injuries consistent with impact. Taylor's vision blurred. The paper floated before her like a cruel mockery. She faltered, and Hope caught her arm, guiding her to a nearby chair. Together, they stared at the form, at the name and date that would be etched into family history, their tears mingling in silent witness to a bond shattered beyond repair. Meanwhile, in a hallway bathed in sterile light, Carter Walton stood guard outside Brooke's room, fielding frantic calls from Eric Forrester, Brooke's father. Eric's voice crackled through the speaker, thick with anguish. I need to see her. I need to know she's alive. Carter offered what reassurances he could, that Brooke's condition had stabilized for the moment, that she was under the best possible care, but his words rang hollow against the roar of Eric's panic. At Eric's penthouse, Donna Logan sobbed into her hands, recoiling at the prospect of losing her daughter and son-in-law in the same catastrophe. Bill Spencer arrived, his usual bravado stripped away, and enveloped Donna in a fierce embrace as they both confronted the fragility of life, business empires and power struggles rendered meaningless in the face of mortality. Back in the ICU, Hope refused to leave Brooke's bedside, her sleep stolen by the nightmares of that fateful flight. She saw Ridge's face in every flicker of the monitors, felt his warmth in the ghost of his embrace. When Brooke's breathing faltered, Hope pressed a call button with frantic urgency, her tears dampening the call light. Nurses rushed in, and Brooke was stabilized once more. Hope brushed back a damp lock of Brooke's hair and murmured, "You have to stay with me, Brooke. You have to wake up." But the ravages of trauma have their own will, and Brooke remained locked in the vacuum between life and death. At last, as dusk settled, a change in Brooke's vitals sent alarms shrieking. Taylor and Hope, summoned in panic, rushed into the room to find Brooke's eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she scanned the unfamiliar ceiling, confusion knitting her brow. And then she saw Taylor's face, drawn and tear-streaked, and Hope's, radiant with relief and fear. "Brooke," Hope whispered. Brooke's voice was a rasp, a fragile thread. "Ridge," she croaked, eyes filling with tears. "Ridge?" Taylor leaned forward. "Ridge, she faltered, unable to say the words. Hope gripped Brooke's hand. "He loved you more than anything," she said, voice choked. "He died holding you." Brooke's lips trembled, her eyes widening with incomprehension and horror. The room spun as she absorbed the words, the weight of them pressing her back into the pillows. She pressed a hand to her chest, as though to still the echo of her own heart. "No," she whispered, a single syllable drenched in disbelief. Then a cry broke from her lips, a raw, unfiltered lament that filled the corridor and shattered the fragile hush that had settled over the ward. Nurses hurried to her side, offering comfort in measured tones, but none could truly ease the torment that seized her soul. Taylor placed an arm around Brooke's shoulders, her own tears falling freely. "He's gone, sweetheart," she said softly. "Ridge is gone." Brooke closed her eyes, could not speak, could not believe. In that moment, the life they had planned in sun-drenched villas and moonlit gardens dissolved into memory. The healing they had sought in each other's arms became a tragic requiem. And as hospital staff administered pain meds and adjusted forelines, Taylor and Hope stayed by Brooke's side, a circle of mourning around a woman whose wounds were deeper than any surgeon could stitch. Outside the building, the town held its breath, waiting for the next chapter of this saga of love and loss. Would Brooke ever rise from this abyss of grief? Could Forrester Creations endure the blow of losing its crown prince? And as the desert night closed in, one truth was undeniable. Ridge's final act, holding Brooke in those last fleeting seconds, had sealed their love in the annals of the Forrester family, a testament to devotion that would echo through every marble corridor and every whispered prayer for years to come. Eric Forrester stood at the center of the grand ballroom in the Forrester estate, the gleaming crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the assembled family and friends. His voice, though firm with age, carried a rare urgency as he swept his arm toward the rows of eager faces. "My dears," he declared, "we have endured storms of betrayal and heartbreak, but the ties that bind us remain unbroken. Our family needs a ceremony, a wedding, to connect us in love once more and to renew our vows to one another and to the legacy we share." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Brooke Logan, resplendent in emerald silk, exchanged a startled glance with Ridge, whose steel-blue eyes narrowed in concern. Even in a family accustomed to grand gestures and shifting alliances, Eric's pronouncement was unexpected. He was summoning not one but two weddings in the same afternoon, insisting upon them as the ultimate balm for wounds both old and new. Ridge, whose heart had been bruised by Brooke's dalliance with Deacon Shepherd and whose loyalty was fraying under the weight of corporate betrayals, felt the familiar ache of obligation pressing upon him. Beside him, Brooke placed a reassuring hand on his arm, but her own composure trembled. Just as Carter Walton, Eric's trusted counsel and the man now charged with orchestrating the most intricate ceremony of his career, was about to step forward to arrange the seating chart and finalize last-minute floral installations, the doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. All eyes turned to Thomas Forrester, who entered alone, dressed in charcoal gray, his gaze fixed unequivocally on Hope Logan. A hush fell over the room as Thomas advanced, every step echoing like a drumbeat of destiny. Hope, who had come reluctantly at Brooke's invitation and against her better judgment, felt her breath catch as Thomas halted before her. He dropped to one knee not for Brooke, whom he had once courted with grand promises, but for Hope, the woman whose absence had haunted his every triumph. Silence reigned for the merest instant, broken only by the collective gasp of the assembled guests. "Hope," Thomas said, voice trembling with conviction, "I find that in the corridors of my mind and in the depths of my heart, I have never ceased loving you. Will you marry me?" The room erupted. Brooke staggered backward as though struck, while Ridge's expression shifted from confusion to outrage in a heartbeat. Carter, clipboard in hand, blinked in disbelief. Floral arrangements had to be altered on the spot, catering orders rewritten, seating charts torn up and redrawn. The photographer consulted, the band instructed to change the prelude music. Every element of Eric's carefully planned celebration careened off-kilter in the wake of Thomas's impromptu proposal. Hope pressed a hand to her lips, her pulse hammering so loudly she feared it would betray her inner turmoil. On one side lay the familiar comfort of social expectation, Eric's paternal insistence that every Forrester bride stand beneath the high-arched mirror. Brooke's watery smile urging her to join the fray in the name of family unity, the general buzz of gossip reporters already lining the perimeter, hungering for scandal. On the other lay the raw ache of truth, the memories of nights spent talking until dawn, of shared laughter in sunlit gardens, of the slender thread of passion that had bound Hope to Thomas long before the world told her she belonged to anyone else. As murmurs swelled into a cacophony of excitement and disbelief, Hope felt a hand on her elbow and turned to see Carter, his brow furrowed with professional concern. "Miss Logan," he said quietly, voice low enough that only she could hear, "I need clarification on your decision. The family has guidelines, Mr. Forrester's directives. We have 2 brides, 3 cakes, multiple receptions. If you accept this proposal, I must update the planner, the invitations, the RSVP lists. I have vendors on speed dial who will require answers in the next 5 minutes." He flipped open his tablet, where digital schematics and contracts awaited. Hope closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, breathing in the scent of peonies and polished oak. She saw Ridge's stiff posture, Brooke's narrowed eyes, Caroline's sympathetic smile, even Eric's serene countenance from his throne-like chair at the head of the room, as if he had foreseen this exact moment and had staged it to perfection. Everything she had tried to outrun, judgment, tradition, entanglements, was here, pressing inward like a vice. Her fingers trembled. She thought of the children she hoped to protect, of the pact she had made with herself to never be defined by another's whims. And yet beneath it all, Thomas's gaze burned with an unspoken promise. He would fight for her, defy conventions, rewrite the endless cycle of love, wedding, and rupture that had defined their entwined destinies. In a voice both soft and resolute, she spoke. "Thomas," she paused, her heart a riot of longing and fear. "This isn't just about us. It's about our families, about legacies, about histories that haven't been healed." A hush fell once more as she turned to Eric. "Dad, you asked us to connect in love. I feel that love for Thomas, but I'm torn between what I want and what this family expects of me." Eric inclined his head, his eyes gleaming with pride and something like relief. "Speak your truth, Hope," he said, his tone fatherly but firm. "We can only build our future upon honesty." Brooke's breath hissed through her teeth, Ridge's arms crossed, face unreadable. Carter rubbed his forehead, already drafting contingency plans for up to 3 more nuptials this season. Hope swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every eye upon her. Behind her, Thomas blinked, steeling himself for whatever answer she would give. In that breathless instant, the possibilities stretched out before her like an uncharted map. She could accept Thomas's proposal, sending Brooke and Ridge reeling, defying the neat, predictable cycles that had long governed their lives. She could reject him, preserving the fragile peace and sparing her heart further upheaval. Or she could demand time. Time to untangle the ghosts of the past, to negotiate with Carter for a solution that honored both her desires and the family's needs, to discover whether love could truly conquer the obligations and resentments woven into the Forrester tapestry. As silence settled over the ballroom once more, Hope closed her eyes and felt, beneath the swirling chaos, the steady beat of her own truth. And in that brief, infinite moment, she understood that whatever choice she made, the echoes of this day would reverberate through the halls of Forrester Creations and through her own heart for years to come.